Adult Swim has a rich history of cancelling shows before their time. A few that come to mind are Joe Pera, Soul Quest Overdrive, and Moral Oral, which Adult Swim cancelled for getting too depressing. I mean, talk about peak irony from Adult Swim on that one.
Tom, if irony were made of strawberries, we'd all be drinking a lot of smoothies right now.
But today's video is on a show that I believe was on the path to becoming one of the greatest in animation history before its cancellation, with that show being Super Jail. Allow me to explain. Season 1 of Super Jail introduces us to the show with an incredibly artistic opening sequence in which a criminal called Jackknife is being transported to the Super Jail, but not before being dragged through an array of different multiverses by Jailbot. And upon arrival, we're introduced to the warden of the prison, who is a mixture of Willy Wonka and the Doctor of Death, Joseph Mengele, and boy, does he act like it.
I've never let an inmate die of boredom, and I won't start now just because you think like a failure!
You see, the warden is actually clinically insane himself and enjoys nothing more than sadistically torturing the inmates. And a lot of the abuse that he inflicts onto the prisoners of Super Jail is a reflection of how his father treated him when he was younger.
Staining his horrible fangs red with the blood of tiny children who don't put away their goddamn toys!
As the warden's father also owned a prison and would force his son to sleep in the cells as well as carry out executions of prisoners who were deemed to be misbehaving. And honestly, this is what I love about Super Jail right off the bat, as we are immediately introduced to the warden acting out in a manner which is incredibly similar to the Stanford prison experiment. And this experiment deduced that people, when given a position of power in a prison, i.e. a prison guard, would abuse this power almost immediately and start treating the prisoners in the experiment with excess force. And ultimately their treatment of these prisoners would be closer to a dictator than a guard. And the warden is the personification of this experiment, with a combination of brutal force and torture being used to keep the prisoners in check, or simply just to entertain the warden.
Fight City, what a wonderful town. Aggression is up and depression is down.
And not only is the psychology of Super Jail incredibly interesting from the first episode, the parallels between Super Jail and World War II are also wonderfully fascinating, as when you break down the warden's character, he has a ruthless aim for world domination and also keeps an eye on experimenting with the inmates.
All these expensive weapons, sir!
That's why you're not the warden, Jared.
And this is, in his words, in order to create a breed of superhumans or other genetic freaks to do his bidding for him. And who from World War II does this remind you of? And speaking of doing the warden's bidding, alongside this wonderfully manic prison warden, we have his hyper-obsessive sidekick and accountant, Jared.
Sir, making a trophy from 800 pounds of Egyptian gold accented with Burmese sapphire takes some time. Sir, my hieroglyphics are a little rusty, but I think this is a warning.
Who, unlike the warden, actually has a shred of a moral conscience and actively tries to talk the warden out of his brutal schemes. However, this rarely works, and in most cases the warden just spirals into an even madder idea which will create even more havoc.
Oh, Jared, how can that enormous head of yours be so full of such tiny ideas? Obviously, we just need to make Super Jail bigger!
And Jared doesn't just serve as a moral crutch for the show, but he also acts as a fable for addiction and how one can easily ruin their life by consistently giving in to their vices. And because of Jared's sporadic nature, he often becomes a punching bag within the show. However, unlike many other punching bags in modern animation, Jared is able to maintain his likability for acknowledging his own flaws and not letting them control his life, even if they may control him for a brief period. And that's not all, because you also have a whole host of other wacky characters, such as Alice, the warden's crush who doesn't like him back, the evil doctor who's clearly inspired by the SS in World War II, Jackknife, the criminal who somehow manages to escape Super Jail at the end of every episode, only to be painstakingly dragged back to Super Jail at the beginning of each episode by none other than Jailbot, the warden's very own AI companion with a lust to torture prisoners. And of course, the Swedish-sounding intergalactic twins, who always seem to find a way to sarcastically commentate over the warden's plans.
Our little baby is the perfect gift to the Fight City.
Although this doesn't necessarily mean that they can stop them. And at this point, you may be wondering, why am I only talking about characters instead of the storyline? Well, that's because Super Jail doesn't have an overarching narrative, but rather contains a collection of self-contained narratives, which are filled to the brim with action. And when I say filled to the brim, I mean filled to the brim, as Super Jail takes advantage of every single second that it's on the air, utilizing visual and audio effects to communicate what the characters are experiencing.
His head is bigger than mine? That's a direct violation of the Super Jail Constitution.
And every visual element of Super Jail is just phenomenal, and it truly feels like being on an LSD trip with a more than healthy dose of absurdism thrown into the mix.
This would be more like two co-workers spending a little quality time together. We'll build a bar right here in Super Jail.
And this absurdism in Super Jail isn't just random for the sake of random. However, in Super Jail, every single moment has purpose, which allows for so much action to take place in the 10 minutes of programming and for each episode to truly feel like its own movie. And the most impressive part about all of this is that this all takes place within Season 1, which is truly an incredible feat considering some of the most well-known and well-respected animation in history had shaky or downright poor first seasons. So, how did Adult Swim repay Super Jail for their excellence in animation? Well, with a 3-year wait, of course.
Oh, brother!
With Season 2 of Super Jail finally being released in 2011, which anyone can tell you is a really unhealthy hiatus for a show, especially for a show such as Super Jail that's incredibly experimental and needs time to grow out their cult audience. However, with all of this said, Season 2 of Super Jail was finally out, and the question we're all dying to know, what did the fans think of Season 2 when it was released?
Well, we're waiting.
Well, to put it nicely, there were some rather strong opinions on both sides of the argument, either saying that the show was now completely ruined or that Season 2 was even better than ever, although admittedly, these were fewer in number. However, in my personal view, Season 2 of Super Jail does do some things right, including carrying on the hectic tone from Season 1.
If they see the man strung out on drugs, it won't be cool anymore.
With the warden becoming more and more akin to the John Paul Sartre quote that the more one is absorbed in fighting evil, the less one is tempted to place the good in question. With Season 2 bringing with it even more convoluted schemes by which to torture the inmates. And of course, more ways for the warden to enrich the prison in the process. However, I do agree with some of the criticisms of Season 2, namely that the show had changed its animation style, and as a result of this, it does lack that LSD trip vibe from the first season, which made Super Jail feel truly wacky and original, even on a network like Adult Swim. And losing this animation style also led to less visual matching than we saw in Season 1.
Smokers loitering in my yard, cowering in my doorways, polluting my lungs, stealing company time.
Which, in my view, was a key part of the show being able to cram so much action into those 10-minute slots. But hey, this is just Season 2, and the show ran for 4 seasons in total, with Season 3 improving on many of the downfalls of Season 2, and Season 4 being an improvement over Season 3, which showed that Super Jail was heading in the right direction and had now cultivated a hardcore fan base. So, with the small hiccup of Season 2 out of the way, Super Jail found itself once more ascending to the upper echelons of animation, with episodes such as The Lost Pack and Burn Stooley Burn creating ever more praise from audiences and critics alike. So, with this clear upward trajectory in quality and an ever-growing fan base, surely it was only common sense for Adult Swim to renew Super Jail for Season 5. Well, not so fast, because of course it's Adult Swim we're talking about here, and when fans start getting too comfortable and enjoying a show too much, Adult Swim has to swoop in and stop all of the fun immediately. And so, after Season 4 of Super Jail concluded on the 20th of July 2014, Adult Swim quietly pulled the plug on Super Jail, with the show never to be seen again. So, what is the point of this video? Is it simply to lambast Adult Swim for being an impatient company and grrr, they cancelled my favorite show so they're awful? Well, no. In fact, I still love Adult Swim despite their flaws and some of their more recent programming, but what I will say is that we need more animation like Super Jail. And what I mean by that is animation that truly enjoys being on television and cherishes every second that they're on the air.
Computer lab would
Be totally boring. This is Super Jail, not Super Detention, Jared.
Because who knows, that second could be when your future biggest fan first discovers your show on Adult Swim, and their perception on what's possible in animation animation is changed forever. And in the modern age of animation, where shows oftentimes just chew the clock until their allocated time is up, it's truly refreshing to see a show like Superjail that cares not only about keeping the audience's attention, but truly taking them on a unique journey with each episode. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom for fans of Superjail, as despite the show having been cancelled many years ago, the creator of Superjail, Christy Kourakis, has since released Ballmasters 9009, which, just like Superjail, is a hectic and well-animated Adult Swim show, and I definitely recommend you checking it out, especially if you're a fan of Superjail. And as always, a massive thank you for supporting the Harryfromends channel. Please do subscribe and hit the bell notifications, and let me know what Adult Swim show you believe was cancelled too early in the comments below. And I suspect there'll be quite a few. And as always, stay happy, stay safe, stay classy.